Gotcha. There you go. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah Bloom. I'm the Quality Places Director at Kansas Commerce. Quality Places, our division that you are joining today, handles tax credits and housing and childcare and community empowerment and placemaking, all the fun things that make your cities wonderful places to live. We are excited that you're joining today. We're talking about Community Service Program tax credits. It is part of the division that I get to oversee, and I am a past administrator of the program and want to just let you all know you're welcome to call me anytime with questions, but I'm very excited. I get the honor to introduce our new day-to-day program administrator, program manager, Carrie Folletti. She has been on the job for a whopping 3 weeks and has jumped in with both feet, learning the ins and outs of this program, already making community visits and answering lots of questions. And I'm excited for her to present to you all today what this program is, what it's about. It is one of my favorite programs at Commerce because of the sheer broadness of it and the impacts that it's making across our cities. It's one of the few that is strictly for nonprofits. There's just some really cool things about this program. But again, my pleasure to turn it over to Carrie Folletti, and she's going to tell you all about this year's CSP applications. Carrie, take it away.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon to everybody. So we will jump right in. And so Community Service Program, CSP as we call it, tax credits for the 2026-2027 introduction for today. So just a quick agenda. We're going to talk about just an intro high level for the CSP, kind of talk about what tax credits are and how the tax credits work. We will go through application details and requirements, the funding and program timelines. Then we'll talk through some examples as well for anybody that's working on developing their ideas. And then we'll also walk through the CSP webpage so you'll know where to find some resources. And then we'll walk through Salesforce so you kind of have an idea, if you're new to Salesforce, what that's going to look like when you are actually applying. And then we'll open for questions. So just an outline of where we're going to go. So kind of just the intro to CSP. So the Community Service Program tax credits, it's that opportunity for nonprofit organizations and public healthcare entities to improve their ability to undertake those capital campaigns. So we'll say a couple of times, it's more of a tool to help you in your capacity in your programs and in these areas of community service. So that would include childcare, non-governmental crime prevention, healthcare, and youth technical training projects. So we'll talk more detail. But under this program, the state authorizes the select nonprofit organizations to offer tax credits to donors to make contributions for the awarded projects. So, and just these are very highly competitive. There's a lot of good work going on across our state. So the strong demand for the credits, organizations awarded credits, it might not be the full amount requested, but we'll talk more about that here as we go through as well. Okay, so what are tax credits? So tax credits, and really the differentiation between a tax credit and a tax deduction. So a tax credit is a dollar for dollar reduction in the actual amount of taxes someone owes. So that donor's tax liability. So they're not a deduction. So they tend to be more valuable because it's reducing the amount that you actually owe versus deductions that reduce the amount of the income. So your tax credits can be combined with other credits and federal deductions as well. And they are refundable. So if the tax credit is greater than the donor's tax liability, the donor is able to receive a refund of that. And the differentiation between our rural and urban tax credits. So the percentage of the donor is dependent on where the charity or the project location is. So if you've got individuals that you may know or businesses that are from the area, may have relocated or something, but they still want to contribute and give back to the community, they can still do a donation for your project. And depending on where that project is, would be the percent that the donor receives. So not based on where the donor is located, it's where the project is being donated to. So in rural areas of less than 15,000 population, that tax credit is going to be 70%. And in urban areas that are greater than 15,000, it's a 50% tax credit, with the exception of Johnson County. So that whole county, regardless of the community size, is going to be the 50% tax credit. So how these projects work, and this is just a really high overview. So once awards are made in June, there's going to be a mandatory training for all awardees, and that's where we're really going to get down to the technical pieces of how this works. But just for an overview on kind of what to expect throughout the process. So the qualified nonprofit, so that's our applicant, you submit your application and they are approved by Commerce to participate in the tax credit program. So once you're awarded, then you can begin receiving donations. So we'll talk timeline, but after July 1 is when you would be able to start doing your fundraising and start receiving those contributions. Donations must meet specific criteria, but primarily the minimum donation or donation value is $250. So just keep that in mind as you are doing your fundraising. So after you do that, when you receive the donations, you will receive the tax credit certificate. And that certificate is what you'll give to your donors. You will be doing some compliance and reporting throughout the project on a quarterly basis. So you'll track your donations to submit, to track to make sure that you don't exceed your allocated amount, but also we want to make sure that you're on track to be able to utilize those credits while they're available. So then the donors would use their certificate when filing their taxes that you have provided to them. So for the donor side, so what the donor is going to be doing, so they'll make the qualified donation. So their donors will make that contribution to your nonprofit. So for an example, your donor is going to make a $1,000 donation to the approved project, and you have received 50% tax credits. So since you're at 50%, that donor will receive actual $500 credit, and they will receive the credit certificate from your nonprofit. And then when they go to file their taxes is where they are going to utilize that certificate that you've provided them. So let's say if they have a $3,000 tax liability, they apply the $500 credit that they've received through the certificate. So their actual owe of what their tax liability is going to be is reduced to $2,500. So that's kind of how that process works for the donors. And then when they go file, they'll have your certificate and they will utilize that in any documentation when filing their taxes. So just kind of as a note, so we administer the program, but any of the tax information, so we don't get involved in that. So then we would refer them back to you or a Department of Revenue. And also important to note that the tax credits are available for 18 months. So if somebody wants that deduction, they could contribute for 2026 and 2027 tax year. So if they make a pledge of 2,000, they could actually do 1,000 in one year and 1,000 in the other, depending on how they want to utilize their pledge. So tax credit formulas. So do you have an idea of what the actual donations would be for your project? So if you are in that 70% area, and we're using 150,000 just as an example, because like I mentioned before, these are very competitive. And so we're saying 150 is generally about an average amount of an award. So it's a good one to use kind of an example. So to be able to generate 150,000 in tax credits, your donations are actually going to be $214,285. So that's what you're fundraising for your actual project to be able to allocate the full amount of tax credits. Versus if you're in the 50% area in an urban, you'll generate $300,000 for your project. So with the 50%, you're going to be able to have a lot more impact by generating a larger amount for your project. So 300,000 is going to be your goal for pledge letters in your application if you're 50%, and that 214,000 is what your goal is going to be for pledges to be able to show your 150 use.
Carrie, I'm going to jump in for
Oh,
just a
sure, go
second.
ahead. Go right in.
That's only your goal if you're only
Yeah.
asking for the 150,000. If you're going to ask for the full 200,000, then go ahead and use that formula where you're dividing by either 70% or 50% to understand what you need to fundraise to utilize everything you're asking for. We will base it off your ask, not what we award. So if you're asking for 200,000 in your application, try to get as close to 285,000 and 400,000 in that case in pledges.
Good point. Thank you. Okay, so we will jump into the application here. So there are 4.13 million tax credits available, and that is legislatively set. So that is something that we cannot go above. So very highly competitive. So the max award is 200,000. So again, due to strong demand, we aren't always necessarily able to award that full amount, but you're welcome to go ahead and request that in your application. And I don't believe there is a minimum project, just the maximum of 200. So program eligibility. So nonprofit foundations, nonprofit corporations, and public healthcare entities are eligible to apply. When we walk through Salesforce, I'll show that to you in a moment, but you'll, for healthcare entities, we'll check business on that because it is a default setting. So then when you're in Salesforce, that's what that business there means. That's what you'll select. So qualifying projects are in these four core areas. So community service, so that'll include childcare. So anything that is benefiting your community. So per se, like if you have a housing project or something like that, that is a service to your community. So that is a pretty broad category there. Non-governmental crime prevention, if that is also a project area you're wanting to pursue, you will need to have a letter of endorsement from your local agency. Job youth training, job training and technical training is another area, and then your healthcare services. And we are going to talk through some examples to show how you can, be creative when you're going through these projects and your application. Okay. Program timeline. So applications open Sunday, March 1st. So right around the corner, those are open through April 30th. So you've got a good 2 months to be working through your application. Applications close at 11:59, so just before midnight on the night of the 30th. We are able to provide technical assistance, and we strongly encourage, if you ever have any questions throughout this process, please reach out. We're happy to help with any questions. We have a great review team that will be reviewing these applications. So Sarah and I do not review those. So that allows us to be able to help with the projects to really make sure you guys are getting the guidance you need in your application. So definitely take advantage of our technical assistance. Reach out with any questions. We can do that up through 4 o'clock on the 30th on that due date. So don't hesitate to reach out. And then there is a $250 application fee, and make sure to save a copy of that when you make that payment because it is required to upload with your application. Awarded projects will be notified in June of 2026. And again, that's when we'll have that mandatory training with all applicants or awardees before we kick off. July 1 is when those tax credits become available, and that's where when you'll start doing your fundraising, and you have 18 months to fully utilize the tax credits. So that'll go through December 31 of 2027. And then your project timeline, so there's an additional 12 months. So the final application And project reports are due December 31 of 2028. So application questions, and we'll walk through this again here in more detail, but so your project overview, so that's where you'll be listing your organization. If you're doing it on behalf of, you'll talk about the actual applicant. There's going to be a project description that is just a brief 2 to 3 sentence description of your project. That is what we use to identify the different projects, and then if there's any marketing or anything. So you'll see that that's the differentiation in that. Then when we get into the narrative, the project description, that's really that overview of the whole project. But the project need, that's one where you really want to talk about what is the need of the project you're doing. That is one of the higher, so it's a 25-point scoring area in consideration. So really tell that story of the need, what's driving that need, and why it's really important. So then the summary of the project is where you will describe how the project need is being addressed. Administration, like what systems and controls do you have in place to ensure that the project can be carried out? So who's your fundraising team, who's going to be doing all your paperwork? Just make sure that you have that capacity to administer this program. Then your project goals, so describe your measurable goals, your objectives, make sure you prioritize what your goals are. Then timeline and fundraising. So again, there's different from in the past. So there's the 2 timelines. So you're going to have the project timeline and then the fundraising. So the fundraising is really going to be how are you going to make sure that you have utilized your tax credits through that 18-month period to show that you have those fully utilized. And then separate would be the project timeline. So then you can outline what steps of this project are going to be done and when to ensure completion before December 2028. Fundraising capacity is another that's the higher on the scoring point. So between the project need and fundraising capacity, that's 50% of your scoring criteria for these applications. So really talk about your historical fundraising, describe any successful, significant fundraising that you've done in the past. So really how you're going to utilize that and ensure that that is fully utilized. Then your funding strategy is going to be how those in conjunction with the budget justification. So how are you going to be utilizing the funds? How are you going to ensure that if there's any other pieces for the project, where that funding will be fitting in, and how you're going to use the tax credits for any major expenses throughout that project.
Carrie, do you mind if I piggyback for
Sure,
just a
nope,
second?
go right on ahead.
I'm not sure if we have any brand new nonprofits on the call, but we get a lot of questions from those new nonprofits who have not done major capital campaigns before of how to prove that they can fundraise. My biggest suggestion for that is to find partners who have fundraised. Tell us the story of who you have partnered with, who you have brought on your team, and the past fundraisers that they have participated in. Tell us how you are writing grants, how you are advertising this. There is a variety of ways that we can feel that you're going to be successful in this fundraising campaign, even if you're new. So if you are a new nonprofit, don't let that curricula make you not want to apply. We will work with you and advise you on how to best address that in your application. So just want to throw that out in case there's any brand new nonprofits on the call.
Very good. Yes, thank you. And again, if you are new, I know this is going over this fairly quickly in this webinar, but again, if you have any questions on that, definitely reach out. Sarah and I will make sure you get that support you need. So, and then that last piece is the support for your project. So talk about, your partners, how you're working with others in the area, and that'll also tie to the letters of support. I'll talk about here in a minute, more specific on those. But on the application resources we have for you. So we've got the guidelines that go into a lot of detail on these topic areas, eligibility, a lot of those specific items. There's also the sample application, so it'll show you exactly what the questions are, and then the scoring rubric to know what the reviewers are going to be looking for in these different sections of the application as they're going to be scoring. So all of that is available for you. So if you have any questions throughout that process, you can kind of lean on those to see where to be putting in your efforts to make sure you have the questions fully addressed.
Yeah, and Carrie's going to talk about those letters coming up again, as she already said. I don't think we have it on the slide, so Carrie, I apologize if we do. Another resource that we get asked about a lot is a sample pledge letter. That is also available on our website. So as you are starting this process, if you would like to see a sample pledge letter, those are out there as well. JC asked a great question in the chat as well. Can your pledges cover 2 years? They absolutely can. We are looking for a whole sum. But if your donors would like to say, I'm donating 100,000, 50,000 in 2026, 50,000 in 2027, absolutely. That is an eligible, that is a wonderful letter that you can that contributes.
Awesome. Great. Thank you for catching that chat. Okay, so our letters, the pledge letter versus support letters, kind of as Sarah was saying. So the pledge letters, that is going to be something that's, that is your form letter. That's where your donor is going to say how much they're donating and sign that. So very quick blanket. So as we were talking about earlier about the donation requests, so when we're going to be looking at our scoring criteria, so if you are requesting the full 200,000 in credits, you're in a 50% area. So that means you're going to need to show, have donations for 400. So if you receive and submit pledge letters showing you've secured 360,000, that's 90% of your total goal. So that is going to score 100% of those points in that criteria because you've really done a lot of your legwork already with the application. But if you, on the low score side, if you're requesting that 200,000 and you're still needing that 400,000 in donations, but you only submit 60,000 in pledges with your application, that's going to score lower just due to that uncertainty of your ability to fully utilize those tax credits. So we really suggest that you get as many of those pledges as you can just to be able to get that full score in there. Whereas your support letters, those are a personalized statement and or endorsement. So explaining why that project is important to somebody. So this is where you want to have the unique personal stories from individuals that pull at the heartstrings of the persons that are going to be reading these. So why is this important? What has the impact been on the community? What is this project completion going to do to improve the service or the ability for the organization? So really tell that story of the why and the how important it is, and be thinking broad about who you're getting that feedback from. So we want to see, that could be your direct beneficiaries, partner agencies, local governments, donors. So if you have somebody that is doing a pledge, so they can also be some that are going to be telling that story of why they feel it's important to donate to this project to make it successful. And then also don't forget your board members. So be kind of thinking broad about stakeholders that are impacted or have a connection with this project, to really show a broad spectrum of impacts for your project. So what we don't want to see is a general form letter that is the same from everybody, that that shows that there's really not a lot, possibly not a lot of interest in a project. So we really want to see that individuals are going to take their time to do a heartfelt letter to support your project. So the last component of the application is the attachments. This is not an exhaustive list. So in the guidelines, you'll see the full list as well. And then some of these are going to be are required depending on your type of application, but you'll need your articles of incorporation, your IRS tax exempt status, bylaws, the audit or the 990 IRS form. We'll need board meeting minutes where the project application was approved. We'll need a list of board of directors with contact information. A letter of good standing is one of those that is if applicable. So if you are in one of those areas like businesses, you'll have your letter in of good standing. We'll need a map showing the service area for the project. And again, don't forget that copy, the proof of payment for your application fee. A couple others, so if it's a childcare project, you'll need a copy of your license, or if it is establishing a new childcare, you'll indicate that in your letter, in your application, indicating that you don't have a license yet, but where you're at in that process. Same as if it is the non-governmental crime prevention, you will need to have that letter of endorsement from your agency for your area. Okay, so we're going to walk through the web page real quick so you can see where these items are going to be found. So, community service program. So as we kind of scroll here a little bit through this, again, it's just that general overview, the funding amount, where you can find the qualifying projects, then some of the overviews of some of the criteria they're going to be looking for. But right here, you'll see download the program guidelines. So that is where you're going to get the guidelines. And this is what the guidelines look like. It goes into a lot more detail, as I was saying, over the eligibility, program overview. It goes into more detail, breaking down those different categories. As well as what eligible and ineligible projects could look like, application information. There's where it goes into detail of describing the different attachments that you'll be asked to provide. Here's to show you what the areas are going to be reviewed in the rubric and an idea of what scoring will look like for final review. Then more expectations, provisions. So all of this is in the guidelines with this detailed long-term timeline that goes through the full project. So this, if you've applied in the past, you're familiar with Submittable, and now this year we are transitioning into Salesforce. So for those of you that are familiar with Salesforce, it won't look any different than any of your other applications. But if you are new to Salesforce, you'll want to get on here and register for a Salesforce account. So that's going to be your first step before you can apply. And then once you have that set up, here's the button. When you're ready to apply, then you can go into Salesforce, and I'll show you Salesforce here in a moment. Some quick overviews about and FAQs for tax credits. But then when you scroll down here to the bottom, this is where you'll find the tools that Sarah was talking about as well. So the rubric that shows the scoring criteria, sample application, your budget template, there's your sample pledge letter. So all of those resources are for you on the application tools, your resources, what the reporting is going to be like, and then program forms that you'll be using later on. So this one right here with the application tools is the important one to remember, so you know right where to go to get your application submitted. So the other thing I want to show you a little bit is Salesforce. So when you get set up, this is what it's going to look like when you go to log in. And you're going to be looking for community service. Then it pops this up, shows you the important dates again, and then you apply. So this is what it's going to look like when you go in. So you'll have set up your account. So you find your company, you verify that's correct. If it's not correct, you'll do an account relation. So that'll impact if somebody's doing it on behalf of, that you may have to do an account relationship. And then it takes you into the application. And this is one that you can save and go back. You're not able to do collaborators in Salesforce like you used to be able to do in Submittable. So it's recommended to like have a Word document, a shared document that you can go through all of the questions and then have pretty much like a copy paste in here. Um, so so that you're ready to go. So you'll just put in all of your information. Again, if the organization and the applicant are different, you'll indicate who the applicant is for the project. I'd mentioned before that there's just this brief 2 to 3 sentence project description. That's the one that we'll use internally to differentiate your project. So that's going to be different than what you'll describe here before. When you are entering your city, you will have to type in on here. So I'm going to use Winfield as an example. And you have to pick this from the pop-up. And same with the zip code, because it will, if you type it in, it will not pull it. So you do need to use this drop down and select that so that it'll properly populate in your application. If your project is going to be serving multiple counties, you can list any of the counties that you do serve in the county areas where you're at.
Feel free to just write statewide or all counties. That is
Mhm.
not a field where you have to be very specific. There's no drop down there. So if it is a statewide project, you can write that as well. You do not have to type
I
out
have to
all
type them all out.
105 counties.
Good point. Good point. And then it's just those criteria areas where I had mentioned before, the need, um, your administration, your goals. So it goes into more details of what we're looking for in those responses, what your timeline, differentiating between your project timeline for the actual project, and then your fundraising timeline. So then you'll have fill in all this information about your capacity, your strategy, and your justifications. Talk about your support that you're going to have, and then in your budget amount, so your total project budget. So pretty simple. And then it'll ask for the different documents that we'd mentioned that are going to be required. So there's the required documents, there is this list. And then depending on your application or applicant, the supplemental are the ones that'll be if they're applicable for you. And that's what Salesforce is going to look like for you. So, and again, if you have any questions through that, we do have there's an email through in there for if you need assistance with Submittable. So we have Salesforce. So we have a good Salesforce team that will be able to help if you have any technical issues, because as we know, technology is great when it works. So. Okay, so we wanted to talk through just some example projects that we've had in the past to kind of give you guys some ideas if you're still trying to think about a project, what you're wanting to do or how others have utilized these tax credits. So Sarah, I will turn that over to you and let you talk about some of these that you've had the honor and privilege to work with.
Perfect. Yeah, we're starting to get lots of questions about project eligibility. So maybe this will give you some inspiration and answer some of those questions. As we go through these, pay more attention to the variety of the projects, less about who and the where, but really the what. Because again, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is a very broad program. That community service category is extremely formable to what your community needs and what your organization is working on. So all of these projects have been funded via tax credits in some way. We have housing for the IDD community. We have housing for at-risk girls. We have done housing for women's shelters. We have done housing projects in for Valley Hope, which is an addiction center. So any type of housing that benefits your community. I don't believe we've done one where it's just general housing yet, but if you're an organization, the first one that comes to my head, Habitat for Humanity. If you're building houses for your community, also eligible as long as it's a nonprofit doing the work. Next slide. Community improvements. We have supported the creation of a thrift store in Hayes. We have done multiple historic theater renovations. We have helped save the old mill in Lindsborg. It was leaning, dangerously leaning, and so we have helped, the tax credits have helped fundraise to make sure that that very historic building did not collapse, but instead lives on. Donations have helped fund university expansion. So we have a lot of universities and community colleges within our state that have their own foundations. Those foundations have applied for equipment, have applied for programs, have applied for wellness centers. A variety of things have been purchased and created using CSP tax credits at our universities. I will say one thing to be aware of if you're a community college on this call, the highest we have are those 70% tax credits. It's 50% or 70%. If you're in a community larger than 15% or sorry, 15,000 and you only qualify for those 50% tax credits, we have run into it a couple of times where the community colleges have received our tax credits and then not used them because there's also the 60% community college tax credits available in the state. So just be aware of that. If you're a community college, you already have access to those 60% tax credits. Let's explore that a little bit first before we explore CSP, especially if you're only eligible for those 50% tax credits. But just a note there.
Good point.
Next slide.
Oh,
You're good.
yep.
All right, healthcare services, again, a variety of things. We have funded elevator installations. We have funded complete new builds. We have funded MRI machines, you name it. The CSP tax credits have helped fundraise for it in the area of healthcare services. We have done equipment. We have done programming, all the things. Anything healthcare services for those public entities are eligible to use CSP tax credits. Next slide. All right, and then here's just some random ones that we've pulled out for you. The Flint Hills Discovery Center has used it to do an outdoor discovery center. Stormont Vale and Topeka has used it for a cardiovascular center. The Neosho Memorial Regional Medical Center has used it for their wellness, education, and business impact center. We have used it for swimming pools. We have used it for playground equipment. We have used it for splash pads. Really, 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 when we say this is a broad program, the sky is the limit. If you are thinking about something in your community, please reach out to Carrie or I. We love brainstorming. We love talking it through with you. We will let you know if it's eligible or not. We did have a question in the chat asking if a capital campaign is eligible. When I think of a capital project, I think of a fundraising project. Maybe you're trying to create an endowment fund. That isn't eligible, but we will advise you to tell us how it's going to be used in the future, what the money is going to impact, find ways to pull at the reviewer's heartstrings, because when you are just talking about raising money to sit in a fund versus saving a child's life, it's going to be apples to oranges in comparison that, and typically our reviewers are going to save the child's life versus putting money in account. So if that's something you're looking at, let us know. Rachel's example was independent housing for survivors of sex trafficking. Absolutely. We just talked about the housing slide. That's absolutely an eligible project. Susan asked if the total project is going to span several years. Do we break that down into phases? Do we have a timeline that is finished by the end of 2028? Yes. Susan, it's going to be very, very important that these projects are completed by the end of 2028. Here's the other reason it's really, really important. We will not fund the same project with CSP tax credits ever again. So if you are in the middle of a major project that's going to cost millions of dollars and you apply for the whole project in your application and you fall short and you want to apply for tax credits again, that project will not be eligible. However, if you're in the middle of a major capital campaign, major project that's millions of dollars, and you're going to use tax credits just for the furniture of one room, or just for the MRI machine, or just for XYZ, whatever that may be, then you can come back and use tax credits for something else later on. You can
Mhm.
apply, if you are awarded, you are eligible to apply for tax credits every other year. So it's an 18-month program, as Carrie mentioned. So after 18 months, you can then be eligible to apply again. The more specific you get in your application with what you're using the tax credits for, makes you able to apply for something else 2 years from now if you need it. If that's not making sense, please reach out. Um,
So I,
for sustainability of projects, can a portion of donations be used for endowment to maintain the project in the future? Is there a maximum donation amount for tax credits? Great questions, Chad. Yes. You can absolutely propose both a project and an endowment fund in the same application. But again, as I just mentioned, if you ask for that both times and then later on you want to build the endowment, we will not be able to fund that again. So if it makes more sense for you to fundraise for the project first and then ask for the endowment later, keep that in mind. There is no maximum donation amount for tax credits. There's the minimum of 250. Your donors can write a check for whatever large amount they want. If they want to take up every single dollar of your tax credits and write one check, absolutely great. And that goes for pledges too. I'm going to turn it back over to Carrie and I'll keep watching the chat for questions. These are great.
okay. Yeah, and good thing. Yeah, thanks, Sarah, for pointing out that when we say a unique project, we want to see kind of innovative. So that's, this community service, as I mentioned, is very broad. So if it's something that you think benefits your community and might be an option, think innovative, unique. We're always looking for new ideas. So definitely reach out. I'm happy to talk through any of those for you. And then phase your project so you don't cancel it out for future opportunities. So that good points. So
Do you want to open the floor for people to unmute and ask
yes,
questions and share
we
project ideas?
they should be able to, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, if anybody has questions or wants to kind of talk through an idea, don't be shy. We love brainstorming ideas.
You did a wonderful job. No one has any questions.
Yeah,
I was
we're
about to ask a question.
go for
I'm
it.
actually not David Spiesman. This was a question though that we were talking about internally,
Mhm.
and and maybe this is a separate conversation, I'm not sure. How do donors, how do we issue tax receipts for our donors if they're getting a tax credit because it's different with Kansas than it is with federal?
Sure. So that is where that tax certificate. So once the donation is received and through the process, then you will receive that tax certificate that you will then, as the organization, you will pass that certificate along to back to the donor. So they'll have that certificate to utilize when they're filing their taxes.
So when we are issuing statements, giving statements at the end of the year, and somebody gave us for $200,000 gift, I still issue it that way, and then you guys, no, I don't.
Yep.
Hold on. So if they, no, you're right on track. And I want to be really clear that any donations made to nonprofits that are eligible for tax credits are still eligible for federal deductions. So this is where the bookkeeping on your end is going to be really important. So if someone, I think your example was 200,000. If they give your organization 200,000, making them eligible for $100,000 in tax credits, they are going to get that certificate for the $100,000 in tax credits. You're still going to report $100,000 in eligible giving for their federal deduction.
Okay.
Half is eligible for the tax credits, half is eligible for the federal deduction based on their income and all of that. I always say, potentially it's also eligible for deduction because I don't know their income. I don't know their tax bracket. I don't know any of that information.
Right, right,
But as
right.
far as the giving statement goes, half goes to the tax credit, half goes to the deduction.
Okay,
Great question.
thank
Mhm.
you. And you did mention, installation of elevators. Does that mean our elevators are 25 years old and, definitely in need of a new set? Would that be included, you think, as well in our healthcare
Yep.
facility?
Yeah, absolutely. We have funded a project within a healthcare facility before. It was part of a broader project, but yes, it is an eligible expense as long as it's a public healthcare facility.
Okay, thank you.
They're very expensive, so make sure you tell us
Yes.
how else we're going to fundraise for them. But yes.
Yes.
Yeah. What other questions can we answer? These are great. If you can also continue to put them in the chat, you can unmute. If you'd like to call us afterwards, you are welcome to do that.
Okay, so we have a multi-million project that's an expansion of the museum. So we could break it into phases for like that architectural drawings and then furniture for our collection storage space.
Yeah.
But
That would be recommended, yes.
Okay, good. I'm glad I understand that a little better.
Yeah, exactly.
But because it has to be done by the 2028 for this round.
Correct.
Yes, correct. We give you 18 months to fundraise and then an additional 12 months to complete the project.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
The receipts that you issue, knowing the timeline on this, if a donor cannot find those receipts, do you supply a copy, or would it be wise for the sponsored organization to keep a copy?
Carrie, do you want to take it? You want me to?
Yeah, the organization will, and without kind of getting into the weeds on it. So it's all through Department of Revenue. Once we hit send, you get those. So it's pretty automated, if you will. And then so you'll have access to your account where you'll be able to. So if they lose it, then you could always pull down another copy to get it to them. But those will come from you, not from us. So yeah.
But you will
Thank
have
you.
access to them forever and ever and
Yeah.
ever. And trust me, we get calls all the time at tax time saying, I can't find it. We are happy to reissue them and email them directly to the donors as well. But if you get a call, you will have that account. You will have access to them at all times. You're also free to download the PDF and save them on a local drive if you would like to, but you will have access to them at all times.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, what else? Okay, well, if I don't see any more in the chat and no one is coming off mute. So again, applications open on Sunday. So we're excited to start seeing what everybody has ideas for and projects for this year. If you have any questions on Salesforce, the application, the webpage, this recording will be on the webpage as soon as we can get it up there, hopefully by Monday, so that you can go back and watch it. It will be available, as well as the slides for the presentation will be added to the webpage, so you will have access to that as well. So if still I do not see any more questions, so I think we will end this for now and stop recording and reach out with any questions. Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.